Today's dedication is for Zahn, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Zhulodok versus partners Cecily and Hargild, Geshath and Plague with Augusta. We have a 3-lander. If we get into a 4th land, Mystic Forge might be useful to us. We're not doing anything at all in the early game though, so I'm going to take a mulligan on this. Okay, and that gets us into Mana Crypt, and a Thought Vessel is really good. We just want a means of refilling our hand, really, but we're going to draw cards in the meantime, so just have to keep our fingers crossed. Oh, excellent, and we've already had the partner players scoop it up. Superb. Only have a finite amount of time to get games in nowadays, so we just have to put up with the scoops, and we know what we do with players that scoop early on us. That is a Darksteel Monolith, one of my favourite cards from this pre-con. I have high hopes for that one, so Mana Crypt into the Thought Vessel. Just hope our opponents don't scoop on us. And we'll get down the Bonder's Enclave, and that will allow us into Swiftfoot Boots. Okay, awesome, and then this player scoops it up as well. Alright, so we'll play this one out and see if we can actually get at least a little bit of a game out of it. Draw into another waste. I don't think we're actually doing anything this turn as it happens. How does this one work? Yeah, we have to control a creature, so I might as well just go for the Gyreet Sanitarium at the end of our opponent's turn. Alright, and they just play a land and go through to the end steps, so we will loot. And that gets us into an All Is Dust. As long as we've got the mana to go with the big spells, it's good to have them in hand. As soon as we get our commander in play, we'll be glad that we have them. Taking 2 lightning bolts in a row from the Mana Crypt. And there is the Solemn Simulacrum, so we've got 2 for 6 mana, which means we're not necessarily going for the Darksteel Monolith or Ugin next turn. So do we just go for Solemn here, and then we can put Swiftfoot Boots on our commander next turn? I think that's fine. And then we might as well put Swiftfoot Boots on the Solemn Simulacrum and shock our opponent. Plague into play on turn 4. Alright, and we draw into Mishra's Workshop, which doesn't help us with our commander. It does help us with that Darksteel Monolith though. So, yeah, we just go for this into our commander, I think. Oh, actually, it's from hand, so we can't do that. Glad I double checked there. We'll go for the Zhulodok then, because it's best to cast the Darksteel Monolith into that anyway, now that I'm thinking about it. Swiftfoot Boots onto our commander, that is a 7/4, so I think we're fine to swing in at our opponent here. If we draw a card to the Solemn, then that's great. Our opponent decided not to block, so just taking a heavy hit. Alright, 5 mana available to our opponent now, and just passing the turn over. So may well be going for the ability of revealing cards from the top. Now we draw into another big spell in Calamity of the Titans. We don't have a creature in hand, so this doesn't really matter at the moment. So let's go for the Darksteel Monolith. And that means that we get to Cascade twice, because that is a huge spell that we're getting here. Into Desecrate Reality. Each opponent exile a permanent that player controls with even mana value. They just so happen to have an even commander. No mana spent to cast that, so we'll just pay 0 on it. It does exile the commander at least. But obviously we want to be putting mana into this whenever we can. Our opponent's playing it out though, he's being a good sport. We cascade into Wayfarer's Bauble, we do have the mana to crack that as well. And yeah, our opponent decides to scoop there, he got screwed over by his opponents. And as soon as we land the Ugin, I dare say that he would have scooped there anyway, because that would have been free from the Darksteel Monolith. So I think it's time to get a real game in with Zhulodok now. Zhulodok versus Goshintai, partners Sadar and Ludovic, and Nimris. That is a heavy hand again, so we mulligan, hoping for some early ramp. Okay, here's a Saga might do. Sensei's Divining Top can hopefully help us out as well. Worst case scenario, it's a 3 mana Skyclave Relic, so yeah, we'll try this. Alright, and into a Gilded Lotus, so get down the waste before the Urza Saga, because we don't want to be leveling that up too quickly. We want to be able to put mana into the constructs on that, so yeah, next turn we'll be able to play that and spin the top. Turn 1 Mana Crypt from Nimris. And with some blue mana, allows him into a turn 1 Rhystic Study. That's quite the start. So that's probably not going to get played into for the first few turns. Sylvan Library being cast by Go Shintai. Drawing a card with the Rhystic Study. Alright, I'm going to spin the top during the upkeep here to fix our draws. It'll be annoying if we would have got into a 2 mana rock, but I don't think it's likely. Yeah, there we go. There's Sandstone Oracle, Void Winnower, and Wastes. So I'll be happy to shuffle the library of these. We'll draw into a Waste. And a good means of shuffling is going to be the Urza's Saga, so we'll get that into play now. And now that we've drawn a card, we'll go for looking with the Sensei's top again. Alright, and there's an Eye of Ugin, excellent. So, yeah, the Sensei's top doing some work for us here. Rather get into these lands than the big stuff that's on top at the moment. Just a consider from the Dimir player. And then Goldberry River Daughter coming from the partner player did pay into the Rhystic Study. And our opponent's playing well into the Rhystic Study. Starfield Mystic is going to cost them 3 mana effectively thanks to that. Don't think I'm going to play into it. I want to be accelerating ahead on mana really. We know that we're drawing into the Eye of Ugin, so we've got 2 choices here. We can either drop a land and activate this for a construct, or we can go for the Skyclave Relic and just spin the Sensei's Divining top. And I think I want to go for the Skyclave Relic here. That does mean that we're drawing our opponent a card with the Rhystic Study. Means that we get 1 fewer constructs as well, but depending on what we have on top, it might not be an ability that we go for anyway. All I'm really worried about with Urza's Saga is shuffling those big spells away off the top. So we'll go for Sensei's Divining Top being spun now because I don't want to be holding up my opponents too much. There is a Commander's Plate, which is really good in this deck. So Void Winnower, Sandstone Oracle, and the Commander's Plate. With the Eye of Ugin, we can actually afford a 4 mana commander next turn. We will have a Sol Ring in play as well off this, so maybe it's just worth going for the Gilded Lotus instead. Anyway, we see our opponent cycle an Unearth. And now another cantrip in an Opt from the Fairy player, not getting into lands, which is really unlucky. So discarding a Spell Stutter Sprite, which might suggest that he's got other counter magic available to him. First commander of the game, Ludovic. And we take 1 damage from the Goldberry. Still no life being taken to the Sylvan Library. And then Eidolon of Blossoms, so getting the first Enchantress down. Haven't seen any shrines from this player yet though. Noteworthy that the Dimir player is holding up priority, so could very well have that counter magic. Alright, so drawing into the Commander's Plate, and Urza's Saga triggering here. We're going to have the Sol Ring, so yeah, going for the construct isn't worth it, I don't think, because we want to be able to land that Gilded Lotus, or at least try to, against the Dimir player. So turning that land into a Sol Ring, drop the... yeah, let's just go for the Gilded Lotus first. Seeing the Eye of Ugin might encourage our opponent to counter the rock when they might not otherwise. So once again, we're the only one feeding cards into the study, but we're not doing that well on lands, unfortunately. So we kind of have to do this. Alright, yeah, and it looks like we're the one getting the counter magic. That is an Arcane Denial. It will draw us a card at least. We did just shuffle our library, so we don't know what's on top. Drop the Eye of Ugin. That can tap for mana, thanks to, where is it? Thanks to the Avamaya over here, so might as well throw out a Commander's Plate. I completely forgot about the Rhystic Study immediately, actually. Yeah, just as I did that, I thought it's probably a better idea to spin the top, actually. But while this player's struggling on lands, I suppose it's okay. Okay, going for an Ash Barrens with the floating mana. So they're definitely going to make a land next turn. So now the Arcane Denial ability going to resolve, and we will draw 2 cards. Alright, now getting into the lands finally. So got some Graveyard Hate and an Indestructible Darksteel Citadel. And now it's a frantic search. Our opponent does have 3 lands in play by turn 4. We'll be able to untap all 3 of them. And getting rid of more counter magic, an offer you can't refuse, and a mana leak. We'll assume that, yet again, there's more counter magic in hand. And he manages to get into a Sol Ring of his own. So keeping up on mana as long as he can keep a hold of those rocks. And there we see X is 4 on a Toxic Deluge, so we didn't get down our commander the previous turn anyway, so we lose nothing there. But yeah, Nimris, the typical Dimir control player, really going to drag this game out by the looks of it. The Midnight Clock, once again paying for the tax. The Enchantress player going for a Weaver of Harmony now. Again, still not seeing any shrines over here. Alright, probably try and get our commander countered here, so that's 2, 4, 6, and pay for the Rhystic Study. 1 more mana for the Sensei's Divining Top, so yeah, we can spin that here. Alright, and a Mithril Coat would be a good one. Yeah, while we've got lands to make, we'll put those on and draw into the coat. And now let's watch our commander get countered by the Dimir player. And of all the counter spells, God, it's amazing how often that happens. Just gave our opponent 6 free mana. And with that mana drain mana, using it to get down the Nimris. But that's about all they did with it, I think. The Midnight Clock at 4 counters on it, and about to get more. We see Peer Imaginative Rascal, which will likely pull Toothy out of the deck. Alright, and there's a Windfall from the 4 colour player, so yeah, I would have liked to have got down the Ugin and the Mithril Coat as well, but yeah, it could be worse. We're all going to draw a fresh 7 here, assuming that the Dimir player allows it. What did he have in hand? A Dispel, an Opposition Agent, yeah. A Brazen Borrower, Displacer Kitten, Dress Down, and a Miscast. Apparently the game wants us to draw into Sandstone Oracle, so we've got that there again, even after a shuffle. Basalt Monolith, and a Flayer of Loyalties. Don't need the Urborg now because we've got the Yavimaya in play, but that would be here for something like Eye of Ugin that can't tap for mana. Will help towards Field of the Dead though, although we are a million miles away from that. Another Enchantress in Enchantress's presence this time. Alright, and thanks to the Eye of Ugin being able to tap for mana at the end of the Enchantress's player's turn, we can spin the top. And there's a Mystic Forge. We've got Kozilek as well. Got lands to make, so land can go first. Kozilek, and we'll draw into the Mystic Forge. Alright, so drawing into the Forge. Now we can either go after our commander again, or we can try and get down Flayer of Loyalties. I'd like to get this down into our commander because we'll get the Cascade, which should be good against the counters everything player. Yeah, and if we can land this against the Fun Police, I'll definitely take that Nimris and force him to sack some of this stuff here because he's not doing too well on permanents. So yeah, let's just go after the commander again here, and then we will pay into the Rhystic Study and await the counter magic that Nimris is no doubt holding up. Alright, excellent, that does actually land, so yeah, we know Kozilek's on top. We can spin at the end of, or at the beginning of our turn. Don't particularly care if we draw into Kozilek, to be honest. I want to get the Field of the Dead out of the way. I think we need 7 different lands for this. Yeah, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another couple of non-basics will do it, but we're nowhere near at the moment. Can't equip up the Zhulodok, unfortunately, with the Commander's Plate, so just have to hope that we don't see any spot removal onto there. What our opponent's got something for us anyway is a Mystical Tutor that he's holding up the mana for. And that's, yeah, one of my favourite counter magic spells, the Fierce Guardianship. Counters non-creatures, so typically I would hold on to that for board wipes and spot removal against my side of the board, stuff like that, so hopefully we won't see that counter our Mystic Forge. See a Chrome Mox from the Flash player, haven't dropped a land yet, even after that wheel. Throwing a Drown in the Loch under that, so that will tap for Dimir colours. Followed by a Mana Vault into a Dorothy Voidwalker. Followed by Bajuka Bog, will exile some stuff. It is going after the 5 colour player over here. Noteworthy that none of these have the Void counter on them from the Dorothy Voidwalker, because they were exiled with the land. But they've got Cyclonic Rift mana held up, so yeah, we just need to hope that the Fun Police doesn't continue with a Rift. D-Manny here is friend of the channel, friend of PJ's from Commander Replay as well, so he's saying that he's going to have to go, and he's going to play out his turn and then scoop. And yeah, I know D-Manny doesn't make a habit of scooping early, so we will not ban D-Manny because we know him, and we know him better than someone who just scoops on turn 0. Alright, going for a Sunfall first though. That seems like a strange play, exiling all the creatures in play then bouncing. I'm not sure I agree with that. If you're going to bounce anyway, you might as well just leave the other players to it. But that does get the Fierce Guardianship out of his hand at least. Triggers the Nimris as well to keep getting card advantage. I'm just hoping that we actually get to do something with our Zhulodok this game. Oh wow, and then this player scoops as well, awesome. Yeah, looks like this player wasn't having fun against the Dimir player either. I mean, it's a perfectly viable option, but you just have to be wary of the fact that you're the only player at the table having fun when you play control-y counter-everything games like this. So we draw into the Kozilek. We don't have a means of haste for the Kozilek, so do we just want to go for this? Get down at the Urborg, and I think we're fine just casting the Flayer of Loyalties. So we'll gain control of their commander, should be fine. Deal some commander damage to them. Mystic Study. Yeah, I think we're fine to pay into that, seeing as how they're only on 3 cards in hand. I think we need to really start taking that tax seriously. Alright, that gets us into a Mind Stone for a bit more mana. We do cast these into the Mystic Study though, unfortunately. The Mind Stone is going to be mana tax for what we cast next at least, but they do get a card here. The benefit of Cascade is that you get cast triggers, but the downside of it is that you get cast triggers into your opponent's stuff as well. Alright, and there is a Metal Worker with some artifacts in hand is good, so definitely cast that for some more ramp. And the Mind Stone lets us pay into the Study. So now do we see the counter magic from our opponent? That is a Sheoldred's Edict. Sacrifice a non-token creature. They obviously want to do that before we gain control of their commander. They'll get some further card advantage. So we have to say goodbye to our commander here, but we did see the Cascade before that, fortunately for us. And save it going into exile with a void counter on it. We will transfer it to the command zone. Alright, so we've got control of their now 10/10 Nimris with Annihilator 2. Like I said, no means of haste unfortunately. Lightning Greaves would be really good. If we could Annihilator for them, then that would be excellent. But yeah, they do have an Annihilator Eldrazi to worry about now. Crazy to see another Annihilator creature so many years after the fact. I first started playing Magic with M10 and Rise of the Eldrazi, so it's great to see new Eldrazi cards finally. Swing in with the commander, make them sack a couple of permanents. So making them get rid of the 2 Pain Rocks, a Mana Vault and a Mana Crypt. And then they're just going to have to take the 10 damage here. So with 5 cards in hand, can our opponent deal with the Flayer of Loyalties? That is just a creature you control, I think. No, it's any creature on the battlefield. Wow. Okay. So they can copy our Eldrazi. Wouldn't have thought they'd be able to give it haste because they'd have to target it with a Swiftfoot Boots or something. So, and that would obviously destroy it with this. But we are facing that down now. 3 cards in hand, deciding to hold back the Voidwalker because they might want to sacrifice that. Okay, Warm Power Stone. How much is our commander nowadays? That is 8 mana to cast that. So maybe Kozilek to try and draw in some means of haste. Let's reveal all of our artifacts to make 8 mana with the Metal Worker. Maybe we just go for the Zhulodok first. Yeah, that's 8 mana, so we go for the Zhulodok first so that we can go for the Kozilek. With the Mystic Study, how much is Kozilek going to cost? That will be discounted to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we've got 3 mana. We haven't made a land yet, so yeah, let's go for paying for the Study. Alright, and that is allowed down, so go for the Kozilek here. We are giving our opponent more information here so they can maybe decide what they want to counter, because we're doing all this during the first main. And they can have more information on how to block and deal with Flayer of Loyalties as well. Let's go for Cascade after draws. Pay for the Mystic Study again. If we can get into a non-basic land to play, we'll play that this turn. That's why I've held off on the wastes. Okay, an Arch of Orazca will do. Got another new one in Skittering Cicada as well. Now see what we cascade into. Again, we're going to draw our opponent, well, yeah, same scenario as with the Mind Stone previously. They'll draw off this, which was an argument to be made for dropping a land before this. So they do get a card off us, but Thran Dynamo will be able to pay the tax on the next cascade, so that's pretty lucky. Alright, and that's into a Sisei's Ring, so some more mana for us. Maybe could have used the mana from Thran Dynamo to both pay the tax and spin Sensei's Top to try and set something up, but I don't particularly mind getting into a Sisei's Ring, to be honest. Especially against a Dimir player. It doesn't look as though he has a Cyclonic Rift available. Now doing something in response. Maybe countering the Kozilek. That is an Urtai resurrected, so destroy another creature or Planeswalker. That probably goes on the Flayer, and that will cantrip them as well. And yeah, the Urtai goes on the Flayer of Loyalties. That's the argument to be made for us doing all this during the second main. Maybe should have just swung in and forced them to sacrifice some stuff there. But we do have an Annihilator 4 for them to deal with, assuming that they don't manage to counter that as well. Drew into a Liquimetal Torque. And we have 2 floating mana, drop the Arch of Orazka. So the next non-basic we get will start to trigger Field of the Dead, which will be good against Edict effects and stuff like that. Yeah, I think we're fine to get down the Skittering Cicada and pay the Rhystic Study tax on that. If our opponent wants to play at flash speed, then we will as well. Alright, so only one spell with mana value 7 or greater for Cascade, and we've got a full grip on it as well, which makes the Sandstone Oracle just a Cascade twice flyer with legs. So yeah, with no haste, we are just spinning the top at the end of our opponent's turn, so pass at that. And another tutor from our opponent in Vamp Tutor at the end of the turn. So maybe now we see the Rift. Yeah, and if that is a Rift, then they'll be able to Rift us and then swing in with this and have us sacrifice lands, which feels bad. Maybe should have got down the Liquimetal Torque so that we could have targeted it. Get rid of 1 Power Stone and a land to hand size. The Dorothy Voidwalker being sacrificed, so we've seen something they like here. Haven't been keeping an eye on the Exile Zone. Oh, it must be Flayer of Loyalties, so they want to get a second one in. Yep, so there comes another one. So that will be Annihilator 8. And maybe they can even go for the Cyclonic Rift to wipe out all our lands. I mean, that would be quite fitting for this game. So even if we had gone for the Liquimetal Torque to target this thing, we still would have had Annihilator to deal with regardless. Alright, so it's Annihilator 4 and 2 from this, because they gain control of it with the Flayer. Let's spin with Sensei's Divining Top. Okay, there's Kozilek the Great Distortion. I think getting into Makokoro would be an idea. So let's go land, Kozilek, Makokoro so that we can start triggering Field. Field is going to be particularly good against Annihilator if we're going to have to consistently deal with this. And then let's get rid of, yeah, Commander's Plate. If they keep copying colourless things, it's not going to be that great. So Commander's Plate and Sensei's Top. They're not sure how good our Commander's going to be. I mean, we could play into an Eldrazi next turn and Cascade again. Yeah, this can be Mind Stone and Skyclave Relic. And then our Commander, Cicada, Sisei's Ring, and the Urborg. Our opponent has an Urborg in place, so no need for that. And then obviously we're taking a heap of damage here as well. And now it's Animate Dead, going on to our It That Betrays. So yeah, they could have had control of a bunch of our stuff there if they decided to go. Yeah, that's strange that they're doing that now. Right, 2 cards in hand. Do they have a counter spell or not? I think we just have to play into it and hope. Okay, doing... is this the Rift? Yeah, of course, that's what they tutored for. So, 1 card in hand, there's Cyclonic Rift. Yeah, I suppose we could have kept the Skittering Cicada in hindsight. Then we could have floated a bunch of mana from the Metalworker and then played a bunch of stuff during our upkeep. Yeah, that was probably going to be the play. Alright, so because we had to sacrifice lands, the Field of the Dead isn't relevant now. We'll play the Makokoro anyway, because we know we have a non-basic on top. Play Sol Ring because that gains us mana. Not even going to bother with Rhystic Study anymore because we've already lost this one, I think. Let's just tap out into a Doubling Cube, and this doesn't really net us any mana anyway, does it? But we'll put 3 mana into the Doubling Cube, take ourselves from 6 mana back up to 6 mana. Thran Dynamo. Oh, and I accidentally paid for the Rhystic Study there somehow. So might as well get down the Basalt Monolith, can tap that down for mana straight away. And yeah, the client's lagging like crazy, so that's how we're accidentally paying for Rhystic Study. See, I click no, I have to click no twice, but I was nowhere near the yes or no button before and somehow accidentally paid for the study, so yet more Magic Online weirdness. Pay for the study this time, and we can target, is it this one? That's the Phantasmal Image, yes, go for that. And that will force it to be sacrificed because it's become the target of a spell or ability. Yeah, so just wait for our opponent to annihilate our board here. Alright, so it's Annihilator 4 effectively now, and we will give these permanents to our opponent thanks to the It That Betrays. So you can have a couple of wastes, and there we see It That Betrays triggers. So the wastes will go onto our opponent's battlefield. And then, yeah, we could, there's a combo with Basalt Monolith where we can give infinite power and toughness to a creature, but we'd need to actually draw into the creature. Maybe with Mystic Forge we could do it. So maybe it's worth just holding on to that, get rid of the Liquid Metal Torque. Yeah, we'll get rid of the Basalt Monolith because we're going to have to pay to untap it as well. It's a, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a 4 mana creature that gets a plus counter every time you activate an ability, so we can either bounce Lightning Greaves back and forth infinitely and put a plus counter on it every time between 2 creatures, or we can tap this for 3, untap it for 3 an infinite number of times. Alright, so our opponent gets us, we go down to -9 off the back of the big Eldrazi. Yeah, didn't draw anywhere close to that combo that I just mentioned. A little bit late on the Swiftfoot Boots, we could have done with haste throughout that entire game really. But we were struggling on lands in the early game, so don't feel too bad about how it turned out, but I think it would have been a lot different if the other 2 players had managed to stick it out. We'll play this deck again because I do like Zhulodok. Hopefully you all enjoyed it as well, and I will see you all in the next one, I hope. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.